Thank you for joining me and my guests on About Fundraising the Podcast. I'm Diana Marquis, host of About Fundraising the Podcast and founder and chief strategist for DM Group Consulting. DM Group Consulting works with nonprofit organizations on fundraising strategies, grant submissions, database analysis, and board training. Give me a call or send me an email to schedule your free half-hour consultation. My team and I are here to help you and your organization thrive. Today, my guest is Froswa Booker Drew. She is the president and CEO of Soulstice Consultancy and founder of the Reconciliation and Restoration Foundation. She has a PhD from Antioch University and is an adjunct faculty member at Tulane University and a research affiliate at Antioch University. Froswa is the author of 5 books and is co-founder of Heritage Giving Circle, one of the first Black women giving circles in the state of Texas, and co-founder of both Power in Action Dallas and the South Dallas Employment Project. Thank you for joining me today on About Fundraising the Podcast. Froswa, you have achieved so many accomplishments, and there is one accomplishment that we share, and that is the CFRE accreditation, Certified Fundraising Executive. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I know it wasn't easy. Why'd you do it?
Girl, no, it was very difficult. There is a program called Melanate that is trying to get more Black women to get CFREs. And so I was in the second cohort of the program. And I remember taking one of the practice quizzes going, this isn't it. I can't do this. It exposed me to understanding that so many of us don't have access to folks with wealth. So we understand writing grants and the foundation piece, but not always the major gift piece. And so it was difficult because there was a lack of exposure to doing some of those things. I got it because I wanted to be able to help people. I've raised money, and it's not something that I do as a part of my practice, but I work with a lot of executives who are fundraising. And so to be able to speak into their work and go, have you ever thought about KPIs for measuring your fundraising? I don't know if you've thought about that, but you might want to consider that. And then I refer them to you to go, this is how you get that done. But mine is just to be able to make sure that I'm giving people and folks the tools that they need so that they're more holistic in their leadership. And so that's really the reason that I did it. I do not want to raise any more money ever, but I don't mind connecting people to funders to help them in that work.
Tell me a little bit more about the organization that you mentioned. Not that I would necessarily have to have known about it, but I've never heard of it.
Yeah, it's a group. There is the founder who is with Borealis, I think, Philanthropy. Her name's Sharday Dozen, who, and I hope I'm pronouncing her last name correctly, she started this group, and it's her and some other women who got together, who have their CFREs, who've been fundraisers and in philanthropy, who said, we want to make sure that we're increasing the number of Black women, because the data was showing that I think of the 2% of fundraisers in the world who have CFREs, 70% are white women. And so it's a small number of folks who have exposure. And I always saw it as the gold standard of having it, but I was like, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to ever get that. I don't think I can do it. And what it has shown me is it is a lot of work. Yet I think when you have, a program like theirs where you're meeting every other week and they're going through all the domains and talking you through it, their goal is to make sure that they get at least 50 to 100 Black women certified. And I think that's so, amazing that they saw a need and said, we've got it. We want to make sure that other people have access to doing this. And so there's coaching and there, sessions at night, and you get the practice book, and, they recommend books to read. That great big Advancing Fundraising Excellence book, which became like a Bible for me. It was really a great experience to have that kind of support to do it. Because, again, some of the domains, there were a couple of them, like the leadership and the volunteers, like hands down, done that, know it. The, securing the gift and some of the things around the database and the prospect research, you understand the research, but if you're not doing databases like Razor's Edge and having to use those, I worked in development, but I didn't do that part of development. There was somebody else who did that. There was a lot of new information. And so to have that kind of support helped me to kind of go, oh, I still don't know it, but thank y'all for helping me.
I really am just really proud of you for going after that and achieving it. It is hard. And then the recertification, which we talked about a little bit, to recertify every 3 years. And I think I've done that three or four times now.
Which is amazing.
It is something to be proud of. And I'm glad that I've done it. And it has helped me in my career. And I just encourage anybody else to do it. I have been part of the CFRE calls it the refresher course. Now it's offered online. But I think that's something, and maybe these organizations do know each other, but certainly the Dallas AFP chapter does not know about the organization you just talked about. And we should look at some sort of partnership or collaboration or something.
I think it would be awesome. They're national.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to be able to get people locally connected, because I was at SVP's event last weekend and someone came up to me and said, I'm getting ready to take it. I'm going to be a part of that cohort. And I said, let me help you and tell you some things, because it's just great to have other people speak into the experience and go, pay attention to this. And not that, the questions are going to be exactly the same, but to be able to help folks understand a lot of it is on securing the gift. It's individual donors. It's more around annual fund than it may necessarily focus on leadership and the volunteer management, relationship management piece that many of us are comfortable with. There's some aspects that if you haven't done, and she's done the full gamut of development, but it's a hard test. It's a lot.
Well, and it is a pass-fail.
Oh, I barely made it. When they handed me that sheet, it was so funny. I was in the test in Santa Ana. They handed me the sheet, and I started screaming. I'm like, oh, my God, I barely made it. Oh, my God. The lady's like, I'm very happy for you. It's like if you knew what I had gone through to get this piece of paper, oh, my God. So, yeah, I won't show that score, but I made it.
That's what counts. That's what counts. You've held various positions in the nonprofit sector and some fundraising, as you've mentioned. Now you have your own consulting business. What drew you to work with nonprofit organizations in the first place?
I can't get away from it, Diana. No matter how hard I try, they just, so I've resolved that's part of the calling. Nonprofit management, I think it's for me even deeper than that. It's community transformation. And nonprofits really seem to focus in that space of looking at ways that they can be a solution. And so I'm really focused on those organizations, even if they're not nonprofits, because I do some work with folks that are more institutions, but do some form of work in community. I'm really interested in helping them think about how they do that work better. And what does that mean both internally, where you got a team that really loves each other and, they're probably not singing Kumbaya, and that's okay. But I do want to see how do we help organizations build healthy cultures so that communities reflect that as well. And so I'm really interested in trying to create an ecosystem that makes our world a little bit better. And so nonprofits just happen to be the space where I see a lot of that happening. And it's just been a call for 30-something years. God, it's hard to believe it's been a long time of being in the space. It's just natural.
Speaking of your long life in the nonprofit sector, you also worked at the State Fair of Texas, which technically is a nonprofit.
Yeah.
What was that experience like, and what did you learn?
Oh, I learned a lot. There's a lot of money that comes through State Fair of Texas, which makes it a very powerful organization. And I think I didn't realize that. I think I thought coming in, wow, they make a lot of corn dogs, and there's a lot of food that's unhealthy that tastes really good. And I think I was more focused on the hospitality piece of it when I started and not recognizing what an economic engine the State Fair of Texas is and the history. And I think that for me was something I had heard of, but to then be a part of the organization and on the side of trying to make it better and make community better and recognizing all of these different dynamics and players that are involved because, what most people don't know, to your point, it's its own 501c3. Everybody assumes the State Fair is Fair Park, and they're not the same. So there's that dynamic. At the time, the city of Dallas was getting ready to look at its public-private partnership like it had at the zoo and was going, hey, we want to see if that can work in Fair Park. So I walked in at a really volatile time because community was saying, I'm not benefiting from this money that's flowing through. There was confusion again about how the fair played a role in that because the fair, again, is its own separate entity. So people were getting mad and going, well, what are they going to get? And it's like, well, no, Fair Park is made up of all these institutions. And so I think for me, the learning was there's a lot of unrealized potential in Fair Park in South Dallas. I got a chance to meet with so many community people and so many leaders that were doing good work and trying to make sure that they had access to the fair. Because I remember, I often tell this story, I remember a good friend of mine who was in leadership in Dallas, and she went off on me. And I hadn't been in the role but a couple of months. And I mean, she went in. And after she said her piece, I looked at her and said, why are you, so upset? She said, I never had access. I've never had anybody to talk to. And that was a learning for me that so often in communities, people don't feel heard. And I learned that it is so better, especially if you're an institution, it's so much better to go in and listen instead of going, we got the solution. We got all these things to offer. Just shut up and listen to people and figure out what can we do and how do we bring these resources to bear to help people. So I learned a lot. We don't have even enough time to go into it, but I learned a lot about city politics and community politics, and learned a lot about resilience. It taught me a whole lot about it can be very hard in trying to make change, but it's incremental. And I saw some good stuff happen and was able to do a lot of good things.
So some of the good things that you helped make happen, are they still there?
Yeah, they're still doing Community Engagement Day, which I love. I love that Jessica and her team are doing a great job of still bringing nonprofits together to build social capital, because that was my thing, still is. They're still doing, from my understanding, the cohorts of business owners, because my desire was to make sure that small business owners had access to being, a booth owner at the fair. Because low end, it was $30,000 to get a booth. And that depended on what location you were in. So that was just starting. So if you were really in prime, traffic location, you're paying quite a bit of money. So that's just for the space. That doesn't include getting the electricity and the plumbing. And most of us don't think about that. You got to get all these licenses. That was the other learning for me, because I just thought people showed up. And when you see the intricacies of setting up a business, especially food related, so many people didn't have access. So I started a program to teach people the business part in partnership with Melanie Lanier, who's still there. She's the senior VP of concessions. And working with her to make sure that it wasn't just about the good food. It was helping folks understand the business aspect, because it's a lot of money. And people assume folks are coming in making all this money in the beginning. A lot of small businesses have to build to that, and build a clientele and a reputation. So I think they're still doing that program. There are a number of things that I wanted to make sure that community had, like the grant making piece. They're still giving out grants and doing a great job to make sure people have access to those resources. They're doing some of the capacity building work and bringing in speakers to make sure nonprofits have that. So I'm happy to know that those things that I started, they're still doing them.
That's great. That's great. So you have a legacy there.
Let's hope so. I want the community benefit more than anything. And if they're benefiting, that's all that matters to me.
As far as I know, you've always been an advocate for leadership development for women and young early career people. Why is that so important to you?
Because I remember when I started my career, I did not have a lot of women who supported me. And the ones who did made such an impact on my life. And so I remember when I was speaking at Movement Day, this is years ago, and there was a young lady who told someone, I want to meet her. And I told my admin at the time, have her come and meet with me. Long story short, this person came in, volunteered. became my admin at World Vision. And then after I left World Vision, she came with me to State Fair, Texas. Bimnet Mashesha now is VP at Girl Scouts of Northeast Texas, and had me working for her at Girl Scouts as a consultant. That to me is what I wanted to see, was being able to be a part of a young person's journey. And Bim is brilliant without me. But to say that I got a chance to walk with her, I wish someone had walked with me in the same way. And so I wanted to be for young women what I didn't always get a chance to experience and see. And I just needed wisdom and older women saying, and there was some like a Vicky Meek. Vicky has been, oh my God, always has been so encouraging and loving to me, and Marilyn Clark and Diane Red. I could go on and on and on. There have been Michelle Bobadilla. There have been a number of women who've done that, but I remember the ones who didn't when I needed them weren't there. So I just wanted to do it different.
In addition to your consulting business and your advocacy work, you're also a public speaker and a published author. I want you to tell us about your books, but first, what advice would you give to someone, namely me, who wants to publish their own book?
Advice. There is a lot, Diana. It's one, I don't think people tell you you need to do a proposal template for your book. I think people focus so much on writing the book and not focusing on, you don't have to have a book written. You'll do that along the way, but you want to use this template to help you think about what's it going to be, written on. The thing that's interesting now is publishers are more interested, because they can help you write. They're more interested in, do you have an audience? So you have to show, do you have Facebook, friends? How many do you have on LinkedIn, Instagram, X? They're asking all of that because the expectation now is you're going to have to do your own marketing. They'll help, just depending on the size of the publisher, but they are really interested in that, which stunned me. And so you have to be able to show your competition, in terms of who else has a similar title. What makes your book so different? So you got to research everybody else who's doing similar books and topics. I remember when I wrote Empowering Charity, and, I had to show how different it was from, Toxic Charity 2.0 and all those books. And I was like, I'm not writing the same thing, but, it's in that similar vein, because they need to also go, well, there must be an audience for this. You're not writing something that's so, out of the blue. There are pros and cons to self-publishing and doing the kind of hybrid publishing I'll put in that space, because I've done that, versus getting a publisher. At the end of the day, when you have a publisher and a company behind you, there's more resources that are poured into it. There's more expectation. There may be less money. When you do it on your own, you can charge pretty much what you want. You just pay the people who do it. But the resources to get the word out are even more limited, which means you have to do more work. And so I know a lot of people who push the self-publishing route. It's a lot of work. It can happen, and you can do well. I decided I'd rather go a traditional publisher route, because it's a lot doing it on your own without help.
Well, you've written 5 books. The 5th one has just been released or about to be released. Yeah. And it's called Front Porch Wisdom. Tell us about it.
So Front Porch Wisdom was the result of some leadership circles that I've been doing for CCDA, which stands for the Christian Community Development Association. And they're a client. I've been working with them for a long time. And so I do these circles with women around the country. One of the editors at InterVarsity Press came and said, you really should write a book about women of color and leadership. And I was not planning on writing another book after Empowering Charity. I was like, that was a lot. Took me a while to write it, but it's a book really designed to share my leadership journey, but using biblical characters to help women see themselves in a journey. So it's a lot of data, because I'm a nerd. So it's so much data, but it also has a lot of really practical information for young women. It's called Front Porch because when I was growing up in Louisiana, we had these front porches, and it was a community gathering place. And so I wanted to create a space for women to gather, even if they're not women of color. Come sit on the porch so we can talk and share and enjoy this sacred space. And so that's what it's really designed to do, is create a space for women to go, I understand. I've been there. I've done that. Or how do I support other young women who may not look like me, but need some additional resources and love and encouragement? And that's what the book is designed to do.
So what is one of the topics that you cover?
We recently covered in the leadership group, which is in the book, the story of Hagar. I called her Hagar, but I was correct until it's Hagar. Story in the Bible of how this maidservant did not have agency over her body. Sarah gives her to her husband. She gets pregnant. And one of the things that folks always look at with her is, she had this son, and her son Ishmael ends up and has, his own 12 tribes and does well. But they never look at how this woman was so othered. So she's in this community. She's taken away. She apparently in Islamic culture, she was Egyptian royalty. So how do you go from being royalty to then being someone's slave? And yet you're part of this new culture, and you don't have agency over your body, and you're othered. So what does that mean to be able to be in environments where you may feel that you don't belong? And so I talk a lot about the imposter syndrome, and using the Harvard Business Review article that's called "Stop Telling Women They Have Imposter Syndrome," which is an amazing article. It's one of my favorite ever. But the article talks about, could it be that systems create this space to make women feel like they're imposters? And how do we begin to start challenging the systems that do that versus women going, it must be something wrong with me? And so that's one of the things I talk about in the book, is using her story of othering. And could it be that there are spaces that make us question ourselves instead of us always going, oh, it's me. I need to do all these things and be a workaholic and a people pleaser. Let's start looking at systems that make you do that. And how do we create better spaces? So that's one of the chapters in the book.
Very interesting. I can't wait to read it. What are your other books about?
Empowering Charity, A New Narrative of Philanthropy, was published with Baylor University Press, much smaller press. They were amazing. But it's really about my experience being in philanthropy. It talks about my work at State Fair, Texas, and what I learned about community. But it also talks about these myths. So the first half of the book is really designed to look at these myths that we have about the people we fund. So like there's a myth about there are all these teen moms. Well, if you look at what data says, my nerd hat, and it shows in the book too, but if you look at what data says, the single moms that we think exist that are teens are not the case. Most people that are single moms now are over 30. Yet we're funding a lot of programs, not to say that they don't deserve it. There are still teen moms who need support. But data is showing us something very different. So what does it mean when we really begin to look at data instead of just looking at stereotypes and what we see on TV? Now, data does show that for the second baby, it is teen mothers, especially in Texas. It's really high. So it's helping folks see that, like one of the chapters I talk about dads, that there is this idea that Black men aren't involved in their kids' lives. Because you look at Maury Povich and you go, oh my God, everybody's on the couch running who's the daddy, and you assume that must be the world. And the reality is, although many Black fathers are not with the mothers of their children, they're heavily involved based on what data has been showing. So what I try to do is give people these myths that we believed about, all you need is a college education. And the reality is we're seeing a lot of young people are in debt who go to college, not disagreeing that you shouldn't go. I did, still paying on student loans. The thing is helping folks see, though, we're creating a whole nother population of folks who are struggling to be able to be successful. Even though they've got all this education, they've got enormous debt. And so those are the things that I bring out in the book in the first half to go, maybe we should really check what we're funding, because maybe we're giving money to the wrong things and we're doing it based on what we think we see and stereotypes. The rest of the book is really about looking at people of color as philanthropists, because I think we always see those communities as the helped. and not the ones who really have been a part of the helping and solution. And then I give people tools because my concern is I started seeing what I call Christian tourism, where folks come into communities and they pass out gifts during Christmas and they pat themselves on the back and go, I'm such a good person. Yet people are hungry the other 363 days of the year, and so 50 some of the days of the year. I can't do math. And you're sitting there going, what? It's more than just this. So I try to give people tools on how do you engage better in community so that we're not just putting Band-Aids on situations, but we're really doing transformation. So that's the book. There are others, but
Well, at least give us the titles of the others.
the others, Rules of Engagement, that was the first one. That was a workbook to help women build social capital. The second one is Ready for a Revolution, which was a group of women I had taken on a silent retreat. I love doing those and going to convents and monasteries and staying in complete silence for several days. I took a group of women to do that. Mistake. Don't take a group of women to a monastery. They talk. And it's like, no, that's not what we're going to do. And so after they left, I started sending them these devotionals. And the book is the devotionals that I sent them to continue their journey. And then the last one was called Fly Away. That one was a book for my daughter. I was scared when she was getting ready to go to college that I didn't teach her everything. So I started writing these notes of, hey, I want you to remember this. And so that's what that book is about, is my way of saying to my daughter, I hope you get it.
That's great. That's great. Who has influenced your life decisions?
Oh, Diana, that's hard. My mom. My mom has been huge. My mother lives with me now. That's something, I call us the Golden Girls, because it's something to have a almost 78-year-old who is so feisty live with you. My mother has been instrumental because I saw a lot of the struggles that she went through. And my dad was not the easiest person to be married to. And so to endure my father, endure some of the challenges that she just had within both of our families of death and tragedy. My mother is a very strong person of faith, and that influenced my faith. And so I give all props outside of God to her.
You've mentioned your daughter. Does she listen to your advice?
She does now. But there was a time I was like, this one? I used to say, I understand why bears eat their young. I was like, I get it now. She does now. She works with me full time now, which is a gift. But she had to mature. She's almost 25, so she had to go through some growing. She didn't know me as the person in community. I was just mom. And so she grew up watching me do this stuff, and it was not fascinating. I remember one day she told me, I don't like people like you do. And I was like, okay. But now she does. She's different. She's a lot more reserved. She's brilliant. And so I love working with her because she's not just my daughter now, she's my friend. But I think we had to grow to that. And she had to see me. And I told her this, and I tell young women this, you got to learn to see your mom as a woman. Because if you're only looking at her as mom, you're expecting her to be on this pedestal and she has all the answers. And when you start to see your mom as a woman and you begin to start asking her why she made the decisions that she's made, it will help you go, okay, because you'll begin to see the challenges you wrestle with. You'll see yourself in your mom. And so I think when she saw that, it changed her. But there was some things I also had to change in me to be able to get to this point with her, because I was always wanting to fix it. And she hated that. And once I got to a place where I started going, so how's that working for you? And that's become my comment now. You crashing or something? How's that working? You like it? Huh. Okay, let me know what you need. And she said, you have changed so much. Yes, because I had to let go. Hardest thing to do, because as a mom, you want to just keep them here even as adults. And I had to just learn to go, she'll figure it out. And she's figuring it out.
Did she leave home to go to school, go to college?
She went to New Jersey the first year, and I did not want her to go that far away from home. But I knew if I said no, it was going to be hell, because she's very headstrong like a mama. And that was one of the best experiences for her. That made her grow up, because she couldn't come to me and her dad and go, oh, I need help. It's like, well, snowing, a lot of snow, you'll figure it out. Hope you got a coat. I remember one time it shut everything down in New Jersey. And me being mama, I'm like, do you have groceries? What are you going to do? She's like, no, I'll get some. And I'm freaking out thinking, does this kid know how the snow is there? It's not like here. You can't just go get grocery. And I thought, well, if she's hungry for a couple of days, she'll be okay. She'll figure it out. Not my problem. And that was so hard for me to get to because I was ready to fly up there and start giving her stuff. And I had to go, if she starves a couple of days, it'll be a valuable lesson and a testimony for her to share with other people of, I guess I should have got that food when they told me the warning was coming. So she went there, didn't like it, and I understood it's a very different culture and tried to warn her, but she had to figure that out. And she came back home and went to Sam Houston, and that was the best decision for her. And Sam Houston, wonderful school for my daughter, and she graduated from there, and she's been home since, 22, 23?
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So back to you. You have your CFRE. You have a successful consulting business, and you are a multi-book author. What else is there? What are your next goals?
Sleep. I wanna take a nap. I'm looking forward to July to get some rest. It's weird, Diana, to say this, but in this season, I don't have goals in the way that I used to when I was younger. I had so many goals about I want to do this, and that. I think now I'm more interested in enjoying the journey. And that's a very different place. And I don't suggest that for young women. I don't. I think when you're young, you want goals. You want to push yourself towards something. It's not that I don't have dreams and aspirations, but I think in this season of my life, I feel like God's vision and purpose is so much greater than what I could come up with. So I'm just going to follow the calling, and wherever it takes me, that's what I'm going to do. It's a very different approach, and I wouldn't suggest to everybody, but yeah, I take a nap and just follow God. That's what I'm going to do.
So tell us a little bit about your consulting business before we wrap up. It's different, I think, from what I would think of as a traditional consulting business that works with nonprofits. Tell us what you do.
So it's a couple of things. There are buckets. I started with doing community engagement. So a lot of groups would bring me in to help them with thinking about how do we target certain communities. And because my research is on social capital, I'm really thinking about what does it really mean to build these meaningful relationships? Who are the folks that you need? Who are, the levels of stakeholder engagement? So I'm coming from with not just this academic lens, but also all this experience of these are the people that you need to talk to. Started doing that. And another piece came off of that was I started noticing that organizations' culture was so messed up. So I had a lot of folks who were wanting to work in community, but they weren't really treating the folks on their teams very well. And there was a lot of infighting. And so it's like, whoa, before we go and cause any more harm and trauma in a community, let me help you start thinking about how do you build social capital internally? And what does it really mean to think about harm that's been done and trauma that's happened? And not that I'm a counselor, but it's helping folks realize some of your people may not be on board and you think they're sabotaging, and that's not what's going on at all. There's some things that you haven't resolved. And so helping folks see that even in working in community as a change management process, it's the same thing internally. And so helping folks think about how do they set up those change management strategies to really begin to do something different. And then the last piece that came out of it was I started doing a lot of leadership coaching with nonprofit leaders, especially leaders of color, and helping them think about not just their engagement strategies or their organizational culture, but really how do you show up? What's the culture that you have? Because if you figure out who you are, that's going to be embedded in the way you work with your team, which is ultimately going to impact the way you work in community. And so those are kind of the three spaces that I end up and working with clients in. And so even with the coaching, I don't do a lot of individuals. I work with organizations who are doing cohorts of leaders. And so I partner with them to work with the cohorts that they're supporting. And so I got folks that are in Miami and Rhode Island, and they're all over, some here, but the majority of them are in different parts of the country. And that's been interesting.
I bet. So the last question I like to ask my guest is, what is the one thing you want our listeners to remember from our conversation?
Take a nap. I think in this space, If you had asked me that in 2023, I probably would have had a different answer. But I think in the space that we're in right now for nonprofit leaders, I think folks are so wound up about what are we going to do? It's so uncertain. It is watching chaos unveil, but it's helping people realize that before you go and help everyone else, you need to take care of yourself. I think a lot of people are so anxious and afraid. And I hope that, in all seriousness, a nap is important. I think people should rest and take care of themselves and create these sacred rhythms of rest. But I also think that people need to be in community, and hoping that, and listening to my story and hearing the thread of community, that people recognize the power of relationship, that to do this work well, you need time for you and have a relationship with you, but you also need it with other people.
Froswa Booker Drew, thank you for being my guest on About Fundraising, the podcast. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.